I want to start with Paul George. I was thinking about how last decade we really mastered this NBA free agency thing where like every year it was like LeBron in 14, and then it was like LaMarcus Aldridge in 15, and Durant and Horford in 16, and Blake Griffin and Hayward and Millsap in 17, LeBron and Chris Paul and Paul George in 18, and then 19, Kawhi, KD, Kyrie, Horford, Butler, Kemba, D'Angelo Russell. It was just a smorgasbord. And then somehow this decade, the big prize in 20 was Hayward. The big prize in 21 was DeRozan. The big prize in 22 was Beal, Levine, and Jalen Brunson, who actually turned out to be a real prize, but we didn't realize it. Last year was Kyrie and Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. And this year it's Paul George, who's been in our lives a long time. Really good player. I voted for him for third team All-NBA. I had Clipper season tickets the last 5 years. At no point during those 5 years did I tell my kids, let's drive down to Staples. Paul George is playing. But he's a really good player. He became the prize of free agency. Is this a Clipper story or a Sixer story for you?
I think it's a Sixer story. And first of all, I felt like you were downplaying Paul George, who is several players' current GOAT. So don't talk bad about the third GOAT, Paul George.
Is that true?
Yeah. Several guys said Paul George is their GOAT. Brandon Miller said Paul George is the GOAT. And then we thought it was kind of joking. But there's several players like, no, Paul George is the GOAT. There's a certain window when you were coming up that Paul George was just cooking, I assume, with the Pacers. And people think he's the GOAT.
Interesting.
Unironically. So Paul George is the GOAT in some people's eyes. I assume this is a Sixer story. And I don't think he could go anywhere else that makes me happy.
Well, because Orlando took themselves off the table with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which made Cerruti happy as hell, but now they don't have the cap space.
That's another story for my Nuggets that I'm kind of upset.
Well, we're getting that later. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's tough.
I assume Paul George is going to Philadelphia. He's been on this low-key ring chase since he left Indiana, where I always thought another story. It's like, oh, do you think if he goes ringless, let's say, just fast forward Paul George's career, if he goes ringless, do you think that he looks back and says, you know what? I could have been like Reggie Miller. I could have been the next guy in Pacers history and just been a one-team guy and just been a legend and got a statue. Right now, Paul George is just roaming statueless and ringless. It's a bad combo to be statueless and ringless, and oddly also the GOAT.
And also representative of kind of what his generation is, where guys bounce around now and they don't stay with the team. So in a weird way, he makes sense for where we've been. I see you're mentioning all this Paul George big picture stuff, and you hit on something that I don't think he takes enough poo-poo for, whereas Kevin Durant takes all the poo-poo. But Paul George has been pretty like bouncy around-ish, right? Going back to Indiana that last year, ends up in OKC. Then it's like, oh no, he really wants to play for the Lakers. Then all of a sudden he's re-signing with OKC. Then a year later, it's like, would you be cool if we traded the Clippers? He's like, I'd love it. That would be great. Yeah. And now he's not staying with the Clippers when I thought the whole time he just wanted to be in LA because he's from here. And now he's going to Philly, I guess, to chase a ring. And there's like some weird lack of respect piece too, because they didn't give him one extra year. He's 34.
Oh, I didn't read the lack of respect thing.
Oh, yeah. That's a big piece of this.
Oh, I didn't. I
he
thought
wants
it was just
4 years.
Oh, give him 4 years. He's Paul George. You're giving Kawhi years. You're giving Harden 2 years.
Well, the Clippers put out this big statement today about why they couldn't come to terms with him. They put it out like 20 minutes before we started taping. And it was this bizarre little, I don't know who wrote it. It felt like Ballmer wrote it and then like a PA kind of spruced it up. But it was basically like with this new apron, everybody's just going to blame the new apron. And we'll talk about Denver and some of these other teams. Oh, the apron. So afraid of the apron.
Can I ask you a question about the apron? Yeah. How much do I have to care about the apron? Can I just watch basketball and enjoy free agency? Or do I have to dig in and be a pro bono lawyer and learn about the second apron and the first apron? It's almost where I take a right turn off the basketball fandom.
You just don't want to be second
highway.
apron. Second apron locks down some decisions in the wrong ways. And I think if you're going second apron, you got to feel awesome about your team, which to me,
second apron, we have to win a championship. We're going second apron.
Or second apron, you're the Celtics, and you're like, second apron, we went 80-21 last year.
Yeah,
and if we bring back these 6 guys with some role players, we're probably going to keep contending for the title. Let's pay the second apron. If you're the Clippers, you've had this Paul George run where he was there for 5 years. 2020 bubble, round 2 lost to Denver in 7. 21 made it all the way to round 3. Kawhi gets hurt, but they lose to Phoenix. 2022, no playoffs. 2023, Paul George was hurt, round 1, lost to Phoenix. 2024, Kawhi was hurt, round 1, lost to Dallas. So they won 3 playoff series in 5 years. And were fun intermittently for little tiny stretches, but for the most part, I don't think anybody really will remember this Clipper load management Kawhi era fondly. Do you?
No.
It was half a decade.
Yeah, no, they're still like far behind Lob City as far as fun Clippers teams. I don't know.
They might even be behind Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles.
Oh, sure.
Whatever that season was.
I'll buy that. I never believed in the Clippers. I know there's pockets of the NBA that believed in the Clippers. I just never thought they were going to do anything other than be middle of the pack in the West and get bounced.
But then there was that moment last year when they were like, oh my God, the Clippers.
I know, but did you really believe in the Clippers?
I was one of the last holdouts because I just don't trust James Harden. I didn't trust Kawhi's health, and it felt like belatedly that was the right thing. But there was a moment there where, what were they, like 26-5?
I just never.
They killed the Celtics in Boston. With the Paul George thing, though, 1 first-team All-NBA, 5 third-team All-NBAs, 9 All-Stars. He was the number 3 MVP in 2019. He's made the conference finals 3 times.
Okay.
Since 2016, when his first season, when he came back from the broken leg, 24, 6-4, almost 40% from 3. And yet he's 34. And I read that Clipper statement. I'm like, I don't really blame him. Year 4 of this, he's going to be over 50 million. He's going to be 38 years old. Can I read you the names from his draft?
Yeah,
most minutes from his draft. Paul George, number 1, 29,000. Here's the rest of the list, descending order of minutes played. Gordon Hayward, John Wall, Eric Bledsoe, DeMarcus Cousins, Derek Favors, Evan Turner, Avery Bradley, Al-Farouq Aminu, Greg Monroe, Patrick Patterson, and Ed Davis. He's like the last guy from his draft. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm like, oh man, we couldn't even make it out of round 1 this year with this team. We're going to go all in for 4 more. I kind of see it from their perspective. I don't like it.
I mean, we ran a graphic the other day. I pulled up his basketball reference that he shot 91% from the line. He shot 52%. These are all career highs. What did he shoot
last
from
year?
3? Yeah, and he shot 41% for the so career high in 3-point percentage, free throw percentage, and 2-point percentage. So overall field goal percentage. I mean, is there a chance that he's like, all right, so you're not going to get the old slashing Paul George, Pacers Paul George, little Thunder Paul George, but you're going to get raw shooter and can't miss from the free throw line Paul George. Little extension of his career. So you don't have to worry about so many
22. You're basically getting a way better Tobias Harris, maybe 22 to 23 a game. Really good shooting percentages, can play defense, and has been in a bunch of big games. And at least for 2 years, which is effectively your window with Embiid. I mean, Philly has to do this. They don't have a choice. What are they going to do? They're on the clock with Embiid in general. They're all in.
How open is Embiid's window in your mind?
In what respect?
So of being the guy, by saying how open is his window, at what point, if you were running the Sixers, were you like, you know what? Our window is now closing pretty tight. Like, are you already in the closing part? I mean, MVP, and then the window starts to close. I guess. I don't see him making. Is he playing 100 games? I don't know. Is he playing 90 games to get to a finals?
He turns 30 this season. He's never had a truly memorable playoff moment. He's had a bunch of different injuries. He has a bunch of, bad stuff to his body in the rearview mirror. That's not great. That never ages well. He's a center. There's stuff to be worried about. And if you're Daryl, you're just thinking, you pulled off this Harden thing where Harden only wanted to go to one team. You somehow got enough assets to at least like stay competitive until Embiid got hurt last season. Then you basically have the illusion of hope with your fans with the cap space. Like, no, we got cap space. The fans are like, yeah, we got cap space. We're going to be able to get somebody. And then they actually got somebody.
Okay.
It worked out. You think like going back to Ben Simmons missing those free throws in Atlanta and that thing cratering, turning Ben Simmons into James Harden, that thing craters. Then James Harden feuds with Philly and Daryl. He wants out. That craters. They have to trade him. They get this cap space stuff back. Usually this doesn't work out, but the bigger question to me is this the right fit / city for Paul George? Because this is he played in Indiana, played in OKC, and he played for the Black Sheep Clippers in LA, where it's all Lakers all the time, and the Clippers are kind of over there unless they're doing well. And now he's going to Philly, where I think what is there, like 20 Sixers podcasts? This is 24/7. This is the moment anything goes wrong, people get mad.
Are you counting Paul George's podcast as one of those?
Now he's 21.
Other Sixers podcasts upset that he's taking Sixers mind share.
Like, do you think he called Tobias Harris? He was like, hey, Tobias, could you tell me about Philly?
No. Well, Tobias, don't disappear. Don't get paid a ton of money and disappear. Right. And you'll be fine. I think that's what Tobias Harris would do. He'll play hard. He shows up. Like he played 74 games last year. He's going to play hard, and I think he's going to work with Embiid. I think it works.
It definitely works on paper. Well, because this Daryl, and I've talked about this in the past, where he has this 3-star theory, right? This has always been how is ever since he had Tracy McGrady and Yao. It's like, if I could just get 3 stars, like that's basically what the Celtics did. And now there's so much talent in the league. I don't know if it's 2 stars and a lot of depth or whatever it is, but just fundamentally, when Maxey turns into a star and you still have Embiid and you have this cap space, you're just keeping your fingers crossed basically from February on that something bad happens with another star that you can sign, right? So Paul George was the logical candidate forever. They lose in round 1. And it's still like, well, they're not going to lose him. They're, Kawhi, who knows if he's playing, but it somehow worked out. And if you're Sixers, you have to do it. I'm not being critical at all. I just wonder from a Paul George standpoint, this now becomes a big home run or disaster with no in between. Whereas the Clippers, he could have just chugged along, made one more thing, and basically Kawhi gets blamed if it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, but he's just gonna, I don't know. If I'm Paul George, I kind of want to take a shot at some point.
Right.
Like he's not doing, like the Clippers are not winning the championship, and he knows it. So I actually like it. Why don't I go to the East? Why don't I go to Philadelphia and try to win? I like it. His legacy is so, for knowing him as long as we have, his legacy is still very much in pencil. I don't know what it is. It's what's the defining Paul George moment? Some bad playoff games, dunking on LeBron when he was, 21 or something.
The Clipper fans would say it was the Utah series, the last couple games after Kawhi went out, when Paul George went to a whole other level.
Yes.
Theoretically is the perfect third guy to play with Maxey and Embiid, because you want, he can be a stretch 4 for them. He could play 2, 3, or 4. So he can Swiss Army knife any of those positions, a little like Jaylen Brown with the Celtics. Mm-hmm. He can handle the ball a little bit for them. They can play Maxey off the ball. He gives them protection during the game. Embiid's going to have the 20-game stretch when he's just out for like a month. Yeah. And he's been in a lot of big playoff games. So for them, it's the all-time no-brainer, because plan B was basically Klay Thompson and Najee Marshall. It's you're just
like Klay,
in that. Yeah.
I like Klay.
Oh, you're in on Klay?
I'm way in on Klay.
You're in on revenge Klay?
I'm in on leadership Klay. This is how you win Klay. A little revenge Klay, but I don't think that Klay plays well. Are we switching to Klay now? I don't think that Klay. Okay, no, I'll save my. I don't think Klay will play well angry. I think Klay needs to find another level of joy. Klay only plays well happy. and he can't play resentful. I don't think he can play vengeful. But happy Clay, if we get happy Clay, yeah, I'm very big on happy Clay.
I feel that way about myself. Happy situations, I just produce better.
Yeah, play with joy. Podcast with joy. Podcasting with vengeance. It doesn't play it. It takes her angrier, a little pessimistic. It doesn't work. Tearing your jersey, getting into fights in the first quarter, doesn't work.
Can we play conciliary with Paul George? Because he had to this point he has not signed yet, but it seems like he's done with the Clippers. But Paul George calls us. He's like, "Yo, Clippers won't give me 4 years max. Philly's like dying to give it to me. I really love living in Southern California. I've enjoyed being on the Clippers. Do you think I go back east and I throw myself into this Celtics, Sixers, Bucks, Hornets nest where now, once and for all, people are going to know about me as a player, or I could just glide over here and we'll have made $500 million and done a bunch of great stuff, and I can just enjoy my life, or I'm going to do this." It sounds like we're both like, man, just know what you're getting into, but yeah, do the Philly thing.
This is what I would say. I'd say, Paul, first thing I want you to do, I want you to watch I want you to watch 3 Rocky movies. 3 Rocky movies. You start with one, and then you can pick 2 other ones.
Yeah.
And I want you to really start feeling Philadelphia. Then I want you to put on some Meek Mill, Dreams and Nightmares, start to get fired up. And then when you sign with Philadelphia, I want you to buy a Phillies hat. I want you to go to a Phillies game. And that's the way to sort of...
you embrace Philly right away. Like Creed's my favorite movie. I've watched Creed 100 times.
You got to go all in very quickly. This is a great sports city. I'm new here. We had some good battles when I was with the Pacers, but I'm so happy to be a Sixer. Also call Iverson. Maybe go to the Phillies game with Iverson.
Have Iverson on your podcast.
Great. And then you
have Philly month on the pod.
I want
4 Philly people in a row.
I want you to hit the ground running. The person I'm taking this from is Drake May. All of a sudden, Drake May at the Celtics game. Drake May wearing Red Sox hats. Like, great, Drake May. This is exactly what I want. You come in like, yeah, Celtics, I'm here. Like, perfect. You would have been at a Wizards game if the Commanders drafted you, but now you're 100% in on the Celtics. Boom, hit the ground running.
It's a great point. Drake May, day after he gets drafted, shows up with all his brothers and his girlfriend from the 7th grade and said, "I wanted you to meet everybody because this is who you get when you get me. And this is who you're going to have in your life for the next 15 years. The 6 of us." I was like, I'm in.
I also need 6 Celtics jerseys. 6 teams. Yeah. Just give me, every guy gets a different player.
So Paul George, you're right, because the Philly fans, they've been hurt. They're bitter. Just a bitter fan base. But sometimes those are the tough love ones that actually, like, you just got to kind of win them over and just get So he just needs to embrace the Philly thing. It can't be anything. If he comes out of the gate and he says, "I never wanted to leave LA. I love Southern California.
It's great. I'm from there." Oh, no.
This is such a tough call. Like, it's just spin it forward. I've always admired the city of Philadelphia when I come here, the passion of the fans.
Yep.
I thought the way you guys treated Ben Simmons, like he deserved it.
Well, I have a special Ben Simmons take coming up.
Here's good.
The other thing and I know you have Clippers season tickets.
Yeah, unfortunately,
it's a Lakers town, and I think that he would enjoy the idea of a city being that passionate about a team that he's playing for.
Oh, this is good. So he could say, one of the reasons I had to leave LA, the city belongs to the Lakers. I wanted to go to a place that lives and breathes and dies with its basketball team. I just missed that. I had it in Indiana. I had it in OKC. I just never felt it. And then you're like insulting the Clippers too.
It's a little shot.
Yeah,
it's like just a quick shot. And then but it doesn't feel like that big of a shot because if someone came back and was like, "Am I wrong? Is it a Clipper city?"
Let's be honest. LeBron owns LA. The Lakers own LA. We're just over here.
I'm just being honest. Now I'm in Philly.
I do feel like he could also like float it out a little bit. Like James Harden, not fun to play with. Like just maybe second, not directly tied to him, but it's like one of those, it's in a story 3 days from now.
Yeah, I think it's like you can do that via maxi compliments. Like, wow, this guy's just loves the game here every day, filled with joy, infectious joy.
Thinking about making me better. It's nice to play with somebody who's thinking about making me better.
Yeah.
Well, to put a bow on this Clippers thing, I'm not ready to call it the most catastrophic NBA trade of this century because I think it was the Brooklyn Celtics trade, which isn't totally the fault of the trade because Prokhorov does that trade. And then a year later, just basically says, we're not spending money anymore after they had gone all in. I do feel like if he had just kept spending money, that Tatum Brown doesn't happen. Like none of the stuff happens that happens with that trade. It's really like a fluke. This trade was pricey when it happened. They gave up SGA. Nobody knew he was going to be SGA. They gave up 4 firsts and 2 swaps and another pick. And just already, even if I'm not going to just read all the stuff that's in it, but already OKC got SGA and Jalen Williams from this trade.
Yeah.
So already it's a disaster, right? And if from a Clippers standpoint, you're like, yeah, but they won the title. And like the way the Lakers fans talk about the Davis trade.
Yeah.
Well, we did win in 2020. We got, we won the title. We made the Western Finals 2 years later. There is a remaining 2025 swap with OKC where Presti's now like doing the evil Dr. Evil laugh. And then there's still a 2026 unprotected first left.
There's still an unprotected
There's still
first.
assets left in this trade. And it's moving up the ladder. I'll just say that. It's really bad.
I mean,
it's a really, really tough one.
The SGA piece alone. The franchise
if it was just SGA and a second rounder, it's a disaster.
Yeah, it's like, wow, I traded SGA. Never mind. Unprotected first 2026. I mean,
and
they could
a
be
swap
bad by
next
then.
year. Like, what happens if Kawhi just misses next year and then James Harden does the James Harden thing and all of a sudden now they're like the 13 seed in the West?
Yeah. And then the lottery hits. Oof.
Really tough. And, I'm sure they didn't make the decision lately. The other piece with it is that they trade for Harden, who they signed today for $35 million a year for 2 years. I'm not saying they picked James Harden over Paul George, but when you trade all that stuff for James Harden, then he's the one you end up keeping. So now you basically traded Paul George, the first that you gave up in cap space for James Harden, which is a bad trade. And then today they signed Kevin Porter Jr., which I was just like, what are you guys doing? Clippers just seem like they're the old Clippers again. But this is why the team's been cursed since they moved to Southern California. It's never worked out ever with this team.
Not great. I'm glad that you have season tickets, though, but not great.
I'm not glad I have season tickets.
Well, you should have at this point, you should just get Lakers tickets.
No. No. Stop.
But it's a better environment.